Hello, students of class 8. We have already completed the syllabus for your periodic test. Now, in my videos, I would be discussing all the lessons that are going to come, and you are going to put forward some questions at the end of the video when they are posted. So, you are most welcome to ask a lot of questions. Now, I'll start with Beyond the Veil part when you have a chapter called The Redheaded League, section 1. And you all know that these in our lesson is dealing on the great detective called Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes was created by Arthur Conan Doyle, who was a doctor. Now, Sherlock Holmes became such a prominent character in the history of detective story writing, but also a very prominent character among all the other important characters created by famous authors. Sherlock Holmes, as a detective, was very intelligent, and you will see Sherlock Holmes appearing in a very common look, with a hat and smoking a pipe, and he would be sitting in the study with reading a lot of books. All this indicates that detectives are very intelligent people. They read a lot, and they are very good analyzers, and they are really good at coding, which is very important these days. So let's start the lesson. Here is a play that portrays the brilliant Sherlock Holmes at his best. So this is your book, The Pathways, and I am reading from your book text. Okay? Characters. Sherlock Holmes, the most famous detective, he is the most important character, the protagonist of the story. Dr. Watson, a doctor and Sherlock's friend. Jabez Wilson, a red-haired shopkeeper. Vincent Spaulding, Wilson's assistant, also known as John Clay. Duncan Ross, Spaulding's accomplice, a man with red hair. Mr. Jones, a detective from Scotland Yard. Now, many of you are thinking that we have completed the question answers, I can memorize them and write. So, if it doesn't come, then what will you do? So don't depend on this memorizing habit of writing from just parroting and writing. You need to read your lesson thoroughly. You need to understand the most important things of a play is the understanding the characters. Now we have 1 2 3 4 5 6 characters here. The most important characters obviously are very intelligent detective called Sherlock Holmes. He is intelligent because he has solved very complicated cases which few can do. So Sherlock Holmes, we need to know he is a great detective. Then we need to know Dr. Watson, his friend. Dr. Watson was a doctor. Sherlock Holmes and Jabez Wilson are sitting in Holmes' study. I think Dr. Watson was a doctor. Maybe it was Arthur Conan Doyle, who himself was a doctor. Maybe he has included that character there. He himself has been included there. Okay, anyway. The scene number 1, the curtain opens and scene 1. Sherlock Holmes and Jabez Wilson are sitting in Holmes' study. Holmes has the newspaper Morning Chronicle in his hand. So what was the newspaper that Sherlock Holmes was reading? Morning Chronicle. So he is very a regular reader of the newspaper because all the news appears. In those time, newspapers are the only means of communication. They did not have those television and all those internet like we have now. So Sherlock Holmes' story dates back to a long time back in the 1800s, when Sherlock Holmes was created. And he was reading a newspaper. And what did he read? Reading from a newspaper. So Sherlock Holmes was reading it aloud. To the Redheaded League, there is now a vacancy which entitles a member of the League to a salary of £4 a week for purely nominal services. All red-headed men who are sound in body and mind and above the age of 21 are eligible. Apply in person on Monday at 11 o'clock to Duncan Ross at the offices of the League, 7 Pope's Court, Fleet Street, London. Now, this ad, why do you think Sherlock Holmes read it aloud? Because when he was reading the newspaper, we can assume maybe he was something had struck him, and he found it little odd, or something he wanted to read it to him. When we are reading silently, and we are interested in a certain clip, and we really wanted to know it more, we then read it aloud. And Sherlock Holmes might have wanted to know what it is about, what was striking about that, what really was very, disturbing, in fact, Sherlock Holmes, that he had to read it aloud. He was reading it aloud to Wilson. Most interesting, Mr. Wilson, most interesting, he said. So he told to Jabez, to Wilson. He was not reading to Wilson. Most interesting, Mr. Wilson, most interesting. So he was reading it to a person called Mr. Wilson, and he was telling that it was an interesting, and maybe he was reading it aloud because maybe Jabez Wilson, the red-haired shopkeeper, had come to visit him due to maybe putting up a case or something. Let's find out. The door opens and Watson comes in, and as Sherlock Holmes was reading it, obviously to Jabez Wilson, telling that, oh, it's an interesting ad. And at that moment, even Dr. Watson entered the room. Holmes, I'm sorry, I didn't know. Watson said, entered, and he, sorry, I didn't know that you were, you had a guest and you were talking. I'm sorry. Oh, come on, Watson, come on in, Watson, Sherlock Holmes called him. This is Mr. Jabez Wilson. He comes with a very interesting problem. Mr. Wilson, Dr. Watson has accompanied me on many investigations, and you can speak freely in front of him as you do it with me. Will you tell your story again for Dr. Watson? Give him the advertisement to read. Wilson gives the newspaper to Watson. So Jabez Wilson had come to Sherlock Holmes, and and the newspaper ad was read by Sherlock Holmes aloud to Wilson. And when Watson comes in, he wanted Watson to look at the advertisement. And Holmes to Watson, you can tell, no doubt, that our client has been to China and has done quite a bit of writing lately. Holmes, he told to Watson that our client, that is the new client, that Jabez Wilson, he had been to China also and has done quite a bit of writing lately. He was writing a lot. Wilson shocked. Why? How in Wilson was shocked how he knew that he went to China. Holmes to Wilson. Holmes told to Wilson, because Holmes was a detective. He was a very good observer, and it's very scary to sit before a detective, because a detective or a very good policeman or a detective would be a very good observer. And you have a tattoo of a fish with pink scales on your right wrist. That indicates a process particularly in China, and a Chinese coin dangling from your keychain provides for the evidence. So, of late, Sherlock Holmes had been observing Wilson, and he told that, that a fish with pink scales on a right wrist and that coin dangling from your keychain is enough evidence that you had been to China, because this is a practice done only in China, that, the drawing or the tattoo. Because you have to go to China. In those time, they did not have tattoo houses, everywhere like now. A tattoo is a kind of art that you do in your body, in your hand, anywhere. I also wanted to do one, but then I later on read that it was not safe, so I did not want any permanent drawing. Anyway, it's up to you. But the writing, Wilson said, but the writing. Why? Your right cuff is very shiny compared to your left one, and the left one has a smooth patch near the elbow where you rest it on the desk. And lately, how do you know? Like I went because Holmes said that your right cuff, cuff is a part of a, the part of a shirt. We call it cuff. Red cuff is very shiny. The right cuff that is very shiny, it is shining compared to your left one, and the left one has a smooth patch near the elbow where how do you know that I was writing lately a lot? Because when you write, um, what you say, your right cuff is very shiny compared to your left one, and the left one has a smooth patch near the elbow where you rest. When we write, we have the elbow, rested, and then while writing, maybe due to regular friction, the cuff, it become the cloth gets somehow soiled, or not soiled, it gets somehow due to the regular friction, it gets quite smooth and shiny. And that's what Sherlock Holmes, that's why he knew that he was writing a lot. Look at the observation here. You have to be very careful. How did a detective so intelligent, he could observe such a thing? So today you have to read this part and you have to analyze it and question yourself how Sherlock Holmes very intelligently throughout the lesson had been a very good observer. So today's lesson is on Detective Sherlock Holmes as a very good observer. So goodbye children, take care.